The other thing that time will tell, and with this one, it's about 40 minutes from this moment. So I can guarantee you this episode won't be any longer than about 35 minutes because I have a meeting in 40 to close out the sale of a business. And at this point in time, the closing is almost a formality. I'm hesitant to say that it is because
congratulations.
Thank you.
Great.
I'm not going to talk yet here, and this is my own superstition. I'm not going to share the name of the business or anything, but this is a deal that came together very quickly. I've talked on this show about selling, putting a business on the block. This is not that one, believe it or not. This process has been very interesting. A buyer approached us, and it went into my spam folder the first time. 3 weeks later, the same buyer emailed me again and said, look, I'm really interested. Like, oh, wait, oh, crap. Okay. And this happens from time to time when you have a business. A buyer will just, buyers will show up. And a lot of times most of the time, it's the wrong fit. I would just say that out of the gate. And so I was very skeptical, and it was like Q4 while this is happening. It's like, oh, okay, now I'm going to have to waste my time with somebody that's just kicking the tires. And, because I've been through it before. Obviously, this turned out to be quite a bit different. But it's a relatively simple transaction, and the buyer chose not to use an attorney, which is like on the surface, fine. I did choose to use an attorney.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Even in a limited form.
Yep. Even
if you're the mouthpiece and you're the one doing all the conversations, even if you write the sale agreement.
Correct.
Have your attorney review it.
Yeah, and there were some things that were put in there that I would never have thought of. And that's really what it was about. And then also just having somebody to call, like, I think this is how this is supposed to proceed. But, you've done this way more than me once, and I'm in the once, sort of. Am I reading this right? Am I doing this right? Yes. Okay. And then sometimes no. Like, oh, okay, great. And I told my attorney when I first started talking with him, and it's a new attorney, and I'm sure I'll have lots to say about vetting out an attorney too. This one came recommended via my accountant. The attorneys that I've used in the past that I would have used for a deal like this are all they've evolved. They've either retired or become judges or things like that, and they're just not available for me. And so, new attorney, but came with a good recommendation, and he is a good attorney. I'm not. Yeah, I need to debrief after this to decide if he will continue to be my attorney for other similar deals. We've got a slightly different approach to things. He did nothing wrong per se, just kind of not. He and my impatience did not mesh well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I have that problem too.
Yeah, I know, but I also had an attorney tell me years ago, haste makes malpractice, and so. There's some level of that is the reason you have an attorney.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. But I'm not convinced. There's some things that happened that I have not yet addressed, like some delays that happened. And I want to talk through those to make sure that they were anomalies and not just part of his normal course of action. Because if they are part of his normal course of action, then I cannot work with him again. But if they were anomalies and it's the holidays and it's weird and I get it, maybe.
Yep.
However, this whole thing about doing a transaction with someone where one party is using an attorney and another is not has been a friction point at several occasions because there's things that, me or my attorney have put into this deal that are new to the buyer. Of course, right? It's like, that's going to happen. And this buyer, because they don't have an attorney, didn't have their own, person that they could go to for counsel.
Yeah.
And there were a few times where it was like, oh, we're actually like this deal might not happen because there's no one in the buyer's court to say, hey, this is okay. This is normal. This is how it goes. This is or this isn't normal. You shouldn't take this. But without that, there were a couple of moments where it was like, okay, I got to tread very carefully here so as not to, upset the deal. But also I want to make sure everybody's protected. And in fact, there were a few times many times, in fact, where my attorney was like, well, normally the buyer's attorney would do this, but I'm going to do it. And to be perfectly frank, most of those I let happen because
that's a good attorney, I think.
I agree.
You know, because you really do. I know you feel this way. You want to be a successful purchase, and you want this person to be successful with your business that becomes theirs.
Absolutely.
Because that's, I think, the sure sign of success is when you can look years ahead and see that they've done well, maybe even better than you, which is great.
I hope that's the case.
Yes.
To be perfectly honest. So when my attorney started doing all that, I was like, fine. And then there were a few times where it was like, okay, you do it, but like, how much of this am I paying for here? You know, like it got to a point where it was like, man, I appreciate this. And in that sense, my attorney and I were in total lockstep of like, yeah, no, everybody should be protected here. But like somebody
can
else
only do so much.
I can only, how much are we going to do here? You're right. Yeah. And there were a few times where he was like, well, normally the seller's attorney would make the decision or the buyer's attorney would make the decision about whether we do it this way or we do it that way. And I'm like, okay, well, but there is no buyer's attorney. I'm like, so we have to make the decision. And there were a few moments like that where it's like, I know this is not normally how it works, but that's how it's going to work this time. And it's just going to be how it is. And you know, everything was fair. Everything was on the, you know, no one was trying to pull a fast one on either side. Everybody was very respectful. It was, you know, we are all focused on the success of this transaction in the future. So the takeaway then that if you are beginning a negotiation and the other party does not have an attorney to recommend that they get one, do you think you leave that alone? I think you leave it alone, but I would have kept my attorney further out of this deal. I would have done what you said in the beginning of our conversation, which was let them be my counsel, but maybe not even let the buyer know that I have an attorney.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah.
And it's worked well. And, you know, especially if you are really looking out for the best interest, you know, nobody's trying to take the money and run.
No,
it doesn't work that way.
No, it never would work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
No.
And so I like that concept of, hey, let's work up, especially if it's a pretty straightforward purchase, you know, if it's all cash type of thing.
Yeah.
And if, you know, but you do need to have somebody look over the agreement, point out things that, hey, that's not going to work, or you should add this.
Yeah, or you should add this.
Phrase.
Yeah. My biggest mistake, and I think this was a mistake, was the buyer wanted to use escrow.com to handle the escrow of the funds and the deliverables and all of that.
Okay.
And I asked my attorney about that, and he said, well, that's fine. And I said, well, you know, but escrow.com was going to charge me like almost 2% of the purchase price. Yeah. And I'm like, what do you charge me? He's like, well, it's, you know, nothing. Now, in the end, I actually think it was a lot more than nothing. But that was the part of the process that, as I said, my attorney and I had a mismatch on my impatience. It was at that point, because then whoever's acting as the escrow agent has to act in their own best interests first. And right, because they're on the hook if they give me the money and the buyer wasn't okay with that, like that's a major problem, right? So so they have to look out for themselves first, and I think in fact I know that's the only part of this where there was any friction between me and my attorney, and it almost caused friction with the buyer too. So, you know, the buyer's money, in retrospect, that's my lesson, is I should have gone with the path they wanted to go with, as long as it wasn't a terrible path. And escrow.com is not a terrible path. It would have cost me a little bit, but you know, it's your money. You pick where it's going to go, that whole thing. That's what I should have done. Yeah.
There's so much to this.
That's the thing, is I didn't know. I know now.
Yeah. There's a lot to it. And I think a big part of it is, you know, these kind of deals, they kind of have a shelf life. So you have to act quickly. Your comment, you know, time kills all deals. It
I have
does.
a sticky on my desk that says that. I think I might take some of the proceeds from this sale and have it engraved on a plaque that sits on my desk.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's good.